For this brief lecture, we get to ask the fun question of biblical interpretation. Why bother? Why should I do this? Why should I care about interpreting the Bible? I've got a couple of answers for you, and we're going to let you do a little exercise at the point in which I finish giving my spiel. And I hope you'll like it. So I'm going to make myself a little smaller here, and we'll get into it. So why do we do this? One of the first questions that you may have asked is biblical interpretation. Even though it may not be your favorite thing, you may have asked, why do I have to take this class? What is the value of taking this course? Well, one answer is you're at a Christian university and the Bible is one of the holy texts of Christianity. Why focus on the Old Testament, though? Isn't that just stuff that's all about before Jesus? Well, it actually is pretty important. People use it in a variety of different ways. You may have even heard that some people want to post the Ten Commandments at various courthouses and things like that. Or you may have had people point to a verse in Leviticus to say, oh my gosh, nobody should be a homosexual. So it does have some bearing on our culture. It does have some, even though it's the Old Testament, it has some meaning for us as a culture, but also it provides the prequel or what you need to know to understand who Jesus is, and it's also a part of our holy text. It's a part of what God has been doing through the centuries. So why do you have to take this course? Well, you go to Gardner-Webb, you go to a Christian university. This is a part of our story. There you go. I just answered the question for you. What can you expect to learn during this course? Well, what I hope to do is to, number one, walk you through the stories of the Old Testament, through the poetry of the Old Testament, through the prayers of the Old Testament. It's beautiful literature. It's a wonderful narrative, and it is this excellent story of God's interaction with God's people throughout time. So what can you expect to learn? You can expect to learn the story. You can also expect to learn things about the historical background to the Old Testament, how Old Testament literature works. It doesn't all work the same. And you can also hope to understand after leaving this course how to properly interpret the Old Testament. So why does it matter? Well, I don't know, guys. I tend to think it matters a lot. If you think the Bible is a holy book, it might matter what you do with it, how you understand it. If you don't think the Bible's a holy book, I guarantee you're going to run into somebody who does. And so you might want to have some tactics for how to read it, how to understand it, and what it might mean for us today. And then this final question. Is the Bible difficult or easy to understand? Well, it depends on who you ask. But we're going to go over some challenges that we have when it comes to interpreting the Bible. Now, the reading that you've done for today was in Bandstra, or that you've done for this lecture was in Bandstra, and Bandstra introduced you to the hermeneutical triangle. It was probably your favorite part of the reading. Now, where it says right here, Bandstra explained this to you, but right here it says text, right? Text is the Bible. And there's somebody who wrote the Bible, an author, and we've got a lot of different authors of the Old Testament, and that author created a text. Now you are the reader of this text. The interesting thing that happens when we approach the text is that we are trying to understand, as we look through the Bible, what the author is referring to. Let's say that the author says, I saw a dog. Now, when the author wrote, I saw a dog, they had something in mind. They had a referent. Maybe the dog that they were thinking of was like a spotted dog. Maybe it was a Boston Terrier. I don't know. Choose your favorite dog. The author had one in mind. Now, when you read the text, you read the author saying, I saw a dog, and something pops into your head. And I don't know what that is, but something is there. And the problem right here with the referent is that we can't be sure that the referent that we have is the same as the referent that the author has. So what we're trying to get back to when we read the Bible is this referent. Well, what did the author have in mind when he or she wrote, "I saw a dog"? You're going to bring your experiences and your understandings of dogs and whether they're better than cats or not. All of that you're going to bring to the text, and you're going to come up with your own referent. So the text does a whole lot. There are 3 different things going on here. You've got the author that wrote the text, you've got the reader, you, reading the text, and you've got the referent. And it can be either the referent that the author is referring to when it says dog, or the one that you see when you read the word dog. Now, that seems pretty simplified, but it's going to get trickier. Because when we turn to the Old Testament, we're dealing with a very old text. We're dealing with a text, this text, which was written thousands and thousands of years ago. And so there's an historical distance between us and the text. And this text was written in the ancient Near East, which is the modern Middle East. And so there's a geographical distance too. And if you've ever interacted with friends from other cultures, then you kind of know, oh man, sometimes we miss each other. Like, for example, when my British friend says, "I'd like to eat a biscuit," they're referring to cookies. But when I say, "I'd like to eat a biscuit," I mean something that I can pick up at Cracker Barrel that usually has gravy over the top of it. So you kind of get what I'm saying here. We've got a long historical distance, a lot of time has passed, and also a long geographical distance when we approach the Old Testament. We've got a lot to make up for in trying to understand what this referent is that the author is pointing to with the text. So those are some of our challenges when it comes to biblical interpretation. Now what I want you to do is go to the link that I have just below, which is your discussion board, and I have a brief exercise that I want you to complete. It is for a grade, so go there, watch the little video clip that I have of Shrek, and answer the questions that I have for you there. All right, thank you.